We're celebrating the release of the new book, Transelectric, My Life as a Cosmic Rock Star, with the author, CIDNY Bullens. CIDNY, what a labor of love I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was um, such a great time to tell your tale. Like they say, it's cathartic to get your stories out while you can still remember them. When did you start the book? When did you say, I got to tell my tale?
Well, I've wanted to write a book ever since, and this brings up another subject, but ever since after the death of my youngest daughter, Jessie, who died in 1996 at 11 years old from complications from cancer. And after her, not right away, but because I made some music right away, but I thought I really need to tell my story, but I never really could put it together, and I didn't have the energy for it. I had more energy for writing songs, which I did. And so it's been in the back of my mind because I knew that the all the parts we've talked about already were book worthy enough, with the behind the scenes stuff with rock and roll and kind of being a fly on the wall. Not a famous person myself, but having touched fame a couple of times and been with people who are there. And I knew I had that, and I knew I had my family life, and I knew I had the gender stuff, but um, I didn't know how to put it together until after I transitioned. And when I transitioned in 20, 2012, um, I knew I had to do something, and I decided to write a one-person show. And so I did. To make a long story short, it took me a couple of years to kind of formulate that idea and to commit to myself to do it. And I started to write it in 2014, and I started performing it in 2016, and performed it around the country for about 2 years. And so that brings us to 2016. And and then I, you know, just all kinds of stuff started happening, and I moved from Maine, I got married. Uh, my life became full, but in the pandemic, which was good for something,
Yeah.
uh, I said, okay, I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I can't play out in public. I can't, uh, nobody could do anything. So, with encouragement from my wife and other people, and also myself, pushing myself, I uh, I started writing the book. And once I started, well, I wrote a couple of chapters, and I did a book proposal with some help, because I didn't ever write a book again before. So I got some help to write the book proposal. I shopped it to some agents. I got an agent in New York City who shopped the idea to some publishers, and I got a book deal. And I got a book deal. I signed the book deal in August of 2021, and I wrote the book in 10 months. It just flew out of me. And so yeah, and I wrote every word. My publisher, God love him, my editor at the publisher, I should say, at Chicago Review Press, loved my writing and gave me a few suggestions, but said, it's yours. You edit it, you write it, it's good. And so I'm
You
very
type it on
proud.
a computer, or how did
Oh
you?
yeah. Well, I also write in longhand. So
Okay.
if I had an idea, it depends. It depended on where I was. I write my songs in longhand in a
Okay.
notebook, and then I type in. It's like a puzzle. It's like I'll type in the words, and then I'll I have missing lines or missing words, and if I see it on a computer, I can then fill it in. The book was a little different. There were some times when I was driving in the car and I'd write, the pad of paper would be on the center piece, and I'd be writing. I didn't dictate. I can't dictate. Dictating is not my thing. I have to, it goes from my brain to the paper, not my brain to my voice. And, uh, but I did type a lot of it. I did type a lot of it on the
Okay.
computer. And, I, to this day, I look back and I thought, how the heck did I write what I wrote in that whole time, in that short of a time? Because a lot of people, it takes years, or, a couple of years, 6 years, 5 years, whatever, to write a book. It took me, it's funny because I started writing it in September of 21, and I knew. So here's where the one
You had an
person show,
outline.
yes, here's where the one person show comes in. That was my outline, because I knew the arc of the story. I knew where I wanted to start. I knew where I wanted to end. And I knew kind of the way it was going to go, the arc of the story and how it was going to happen. I also had boxes and boxes and boxes of journals that I had written for 50 years. Reading the journals was the hardest part of the whole thing, because it was so depressing. It was really depressing. I actually went into a depression reading my journals, because when you read a journal of yourself being 20 years old, 21 years old, 25 years old, 40 years old, and you're going, oh my friggin' God, the stuff I thought about, the stuff I went through, the stuff I, uh, you know, ruminated about, the choices I made, I mean, yeah, there are great things in there. There are bells and whistles all in there. This happened, that happened, this happened. Oh boy, but the bulk of my journals, which nobody will ever see, they will not be published. They'll be burned when I die. Everybody's got the directive. Um, you know, I I thought, man, I'm still the same sorry ass person I was when I was 20 years old, I mean, we look back at ourselves, we look at ourselves with a different lens than other people look at us. We know all the machinations of our being and what we've been through, and how we deal with life. And that was really uh, difficult to read through all the journals. I really tried to be, and I was honest in this book. Didn't want to um, gloss over any of my being. I didn't want to, give the impression that I wasn't a flawed human being. I wanted this book to be as true as I could. Of course, there's not every detail in a book, in 260 pages or whatever it is. There's not every detail. I skipped over a lot of stuff. But what is in there is honest, and honest about me, honest about my choices, honest about my feelings, my foibles, you know, how I feel about myself and felt about myself, um, along with all, like we've been talking about, the bells and whistles and the incredible experiences I've had in my life. Now, let me tell a little story, and this hopefully will sum it up.
Sure.
The woman who was helping me do the book proposal, a friend, said to me, you got to have a title for the book. And I said, Transelectric. Just came out of my mouth, Transelectric. She said, no, that I don't think that's really good enough. And I thought, okay, well, I'll think about it. Never left me. It was the first thing out of my mouth. To me, that was the thing. My wife, Tanya, said, well, and I'm a subtitles person. I like titles. I
Yeah.
write songs from titles. I like subtitles. So I knew I had to have a subtitle for me. And she said, and this is in the prologue of the book. So this story is in the prologue of the book, told in much more detail. Uh, she said, well, not this story, but the story of how this came to be. She said, you need to say, you know, the life of a cosmic rock star. It's something about cosmic rock star, which the story in the book in the prologue is how she named me the cosmic rock star, my wife. And I said, I can't do that. I can't say, that I'm a cosmic rock star. I'm not a rock star. I'm just happen to be in the business and I'd had all these things happen, but I can't do that. I mean, I just felt very uncomfortable about calling myself any kind of rock star. And then I got halfway through the book. I had written all the stuff that we've just talked about and more. Stories about meeting people, stories about the chance, this and that and the other thing, all through my life. But I got halfway through the book and I said, oh my God, I am a cosmic rock star. And the operative word is cosmic, meaning not of this earth, meaning I'm not an earthly rock star. I mean, some people think I've done a lot more than most people in the rock and roll business, but I don't consider myself a star, a rock star, even though that's what I always wanted. It was the goal that I always wanted. I didn't make it. But so the operative word that allowed me to do it was cosmic, because if you read the book, and I said this before to you, I end up in these places with all these people. And so I was able to claim that title. And so when I told my publisher, I think the book should be Transelectric, The Life of a Cosmic Rock Star, he said, oh no, it's my life as a cosmic rock star. And so that's how the name of the book came to be.
Well, I think it's a great title, great subtitle, gets people curious that don't know you. Like I say, that cover image of your book is a
Yeah.
cover of one of your albums that stuck in my head.
Well, it's iconic, just like the name of your podcast.
I
It's
mean,
iconic. It is. It's
what
my
the
iconic picture.
hell?
Yeah.
Desire Wire, it came out in what year?
So it came out in late 78.
And that was
Survivor
you,
came out in 79.
and you were on
Yeah,
United Artists?
that's correct.
Who was the head of that label?
At the time, it was Artie Mogul and Jerry Rubinstein.
Okay.
It had been, and then as Survivor, which I talk about in the book, Survivor, the single was shooting up the charts until EMI decided to buy UA, and in the middle of my single being released, and it dropped off the charts in 2 weeks, because when a label gets bought up, that's the end of whatever's
Right.
on
If
it.
your foot's not on the gas, you lose your bullet.
Yeah.
But yeah, you talk about tales of working, of course, with Bob Crew and being one-on-one with the legends like Jerry Wexler,
Mm-hmm.
Atlantic Records, one of the founding forces, along with Ahmet Ertegun and his brother, the beginning of the classic black music that we know, Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles and Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett, all the greats. And
Yeah.
and then of course your years with Elton John, and boy, is Elton a fan of black music. I mean, wow. We talked before in other segments about seeing Elton buy hundreds
Yeah.
hundreds of CDs. You
Yep.
can only imagine what his homes look like. He must have racks built where he has thousands.
I've seen a few in different places, not recently, but
I wonder if he's a fan now of Spotify, where you can just tune in and explore stuff at a click and not have to have the physical. I love the physical world. There's no question.
yeah.
It supported the artist more than this streaming thing. But
I don't know, but and of course he travels so much,
yeah,
but I'll bet in his home he has a really good turntable and system.
yeah, no doubt. And of course,
But I don't know. I can't tell
your
you.
book starts with that experience, seeing the Rolling Stones first tour '66,
Yeah.
and literally being feet away from Mick Jagger, and then being inches away from Mick, and the crush of the limo, and all of that, and leading into those years with Elton singing. I mean, you talked
hmm
about Dodger Stadium. I can only imagine some of the other iconic venues that you walk out on stage and you're like, this is surreal. I can't even believe this many people are showing up. And of course, when Elton performs, it's one hit after the other. I mean, the whole show is just one big jukebox playlist. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Even back in 1975 and 76, it was like that. We did 4-hour shows back then. And so you can imagine, I mean, because you've been to his shows,
Yeah.
it just keeps growing, the list of songs. But I'm telling you, even back in 75 and 76, it was hit after hit after hit after hit. And that's 50 years ago. So think about it.
That's incredible. You mentioned Russ Regan in another segment. Of course, Russ being a legendary promotion guy, ended up running a number of labels, highly influential in bringing Elton to America. And of course, those early records. And Russ used to tell me stories about, you
Hmm.
know, getting the new Elton LP in the mail and just telling the whole staff, all right, stop. We're going to sit cross-legged on the floor and we're going to listen to the new Elton John album, once, twice, maybe three times to get ready to promote this thing, and how life-changing it was. Well, Russ and I later became partners in business, and he was my
Hmm.
best man at my wedding
Oh,
in Malibu.
he was
So
such a sweet guy.
yeah, he was incredible, a music guy to
Yeah.
the end.
Really
We,
sweet, sweet
we
guy.
lost him just a few years ago, but one of the
Yeah.
last in stores I ever went to, at Tower Record Sunset, was Elton, and I got up to talk to him, and I just whispered in his ear that Russ Regan was, a good friend of mine and my best man, and he just smiled and he's like, what a great person he was,
Yeah.
or actually he was still alive. What a great person he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Elton had a great memory, and of course he went through a lot in his life. So to maintain and remember who had helped him along the way
Yeah.
is probably one of the reasons why he's still in touch with you. He appreciates you being there and being who you are. And I think that's amazing. I've always said, and I interviewed a who's who in this industry. I've done over 5,000 interviews. I've interviewed
Mm.
everybody. And I
Wow.
always say the bigger the star, in a lot of ways, the more humble they are.
Mm.
Number one, they don't have anything to prove to anybody.
Hmm.
They're already there, fighting up the tooth and nail cutthroat ladder. There's a lot of backstabbing, but
Yeah.
so many of these super greats, the Paul McCartneys, the Eltons, I mean, you name it, they're just so humble. They're just so down to earth. It really makes you feel good that
Yeah.
being successful doesn't mean you have to be an a-hole and crush
Yeah.
people and all that. And I'm sure Elton's got his moods and all that, but you know, um, it's just so great to see the success doesn't have to spoil, that character. But
Yeah.
you've got so many experiences in this book. We encourage everyone to go get it. And besides having people hear your story, what do you hope people get the most out of Transelectric?
Well, it's a multi-tiered story. I mean, I am a transgender man. I did transition from Cindy to Sydney back in 2011, 12. Um, that's kind of the latter part of the book, but it's my publisher says it's 4 books in one, and it's a rock and roll memoir. It really is. It's a rock and roll memoir. But the other threads of it are a life, a human life, a life where I had gender issues from the time I was 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. I didn't transition until late in life, and what that experience has been like, both living in what I felt was the wrong body and finally transitioning into what I feel is the right body, but having to deal with the social part of that and the political part of that and all of that. It's also about me as a human uh, being, having children. I had children. I lost a child. The middle of the book is about my family life and my 2 children and what it was like to be a mother and what it was like to lose a child, and from that experience, uh and it's hard for me to say this and without going into some of the stuff because it sounds kind of dry, but I lost a child, and I wrote some songs for an album called Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth, which was for me, not for you, but it came out globally thanks to Danny Goldberg.
Mm.
um and it changed my life, so that of course was probably the most life-changing experience for me, was losing my daughter at 11 years old. So I talk about that, but I also talk about how my music played into my I don't call it healing, but into my um the aftermath of losing my child, and into something that could be positive, if there is such a thing, out of that experience, and sharing with other bereaved parents and bereaved people, and how that music from Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth continues to this day to impact people who've gone through great loss. And even though it's was my biggest commercial success as an album, in terms of the songs. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy that it was written after the death of my child, but it also was the most successful album I've ever had musically. And uh, so there's a lot in the book. And so, really, I know this is a long winded explanation, but it's a human story. And that's what I want people to understand. People who don't understand what it's like to be transgender, and you shouldn't if you aren't. How could you? It's like understanding what it's like to lose a child. You can't unless you do. And I can't understand other people's experiences, but we can witness, um, we can learn, and we can hopefully accept other people's experiences. And mine is just a human story. I just happen to have uh the name of my I'll say it this way. The name of my one person show was Somewhere Between Not an Ordinary Life. And that is what the book portrays, not an ordinary life.
Well, highly recommended. Transelectric, my life as a cosmic rock star. Our special guest has been CIDNY Bullens. Thank you so much for joining us. What an amazing story. I can't wait to see people experience your book and have the joy that I have. And what a pleasure speaking to you. It was really great to relive these stories. We have a lot of music in common, and it was amazing to see you getting through all of this and able to now eventually move up and be with your grandkids.
Yeah,
What an awesome time. Sydney,
I
thanks so
know.
much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure and hope to speak to you again sometime.
Thank you so much. And can I say one more thing?
Yes, yes.
I had just had a new album come out in October, late October, called
Ah,
Little Pieces on Kill Rock Stars Records. So keep an eye out for that.
that we will.